Hi everyone, so I'm gonna show you how I turned this old router that I bought secondhand into a good or better looking router. When I bought it, it had a lot of yellow stains because the person who previously owned it left it in the sun, so that left it pretty much kind of dirty. It was bad. It was yellow everywhere, and so what they did is they scraped it with something like the stuff that you wash your pots with, and that didn't work out. What I'm gonna have to do is actually sand it again, and then after sanding it again I'm gonna have to spray it. You can't really see how bad it looks here on the video because of the lighting that I have, but it had a lot of yellow stains. So let's start. So first, you're gonna need to remove the clips on the sides on top of the router itself. Those are pretty easy. You just get something like a screwdriver, flat, and then pry on each side and it comes off. And you turn it around. After you turn it around, you take off these little strips on the side that cover the screws. That rubber also keeps the router from moving around. And once you remove these two rubbers on the front and the back side, you're gonna see 6 screws underneath that. So you unscrew those screws, you open them one by one. Obviously one's in the middle and the other one's on the side. When you get to the middle of the one at the back, it has a little small paper, but there is a screw in there, even though you might miss it because it might look a little bit hidden. Then you can pry this bottom out as well. Once you finish prying the bottom of the router, what you're gonna need to do is take off the 2 screws on top, and then after you take off the 2 screws on top, turn it back around and pry on the side, and you pry this little cover for the LAN cable and the power cable and all this stuff and the antennas. These also have many clips on the side, so you clip them one by one. Be careful not to break the clips, so you need to take your time with this. Alright, and then after you take that off, the router will just slide right out, and now you have the cover on top. And this is what the inside of the router looks like. I'm gonna show you what the inside of the router looks like. I'm gonna just put all of these things aside so I have station to work, and once that is done, I'm getting ready to actually sand it now. I'm gonna wet sand it because that does 2 things. One, it prevents it from making too much of a mess because it's very fine sanding here, and 2, it makes the sanding a lot lighter than if you were just dry sanding it. So you may not see it on the video here, but whenever I'm around the things like the Huawei logo or the writings on the sides there in the middle, that's written, and I'm also using a 1000 grit sandpaper. I don't apply a lot of pressure with the sandpaper. It's just for the big scratches that they put in there that I'm using the sandpaper for. Otherwise I wouldn't have used sandpaper. That little red thing that is an alternative to sandpaper makes a lot better, finer scratches. You actually wouldn't see the scratches if you used only that. So I'm gonna wet sand all over it, and if you can, make sure that you go in one direction. I know that I sometimes use the different, like the opposite direction, but I always correct it. I make sure that it doesn't show once I finish sanding off whatever it is that I was sanding there. So you try and do it in one direction as much as you possibly can, so that it's really neat and nice to look at in the finished product later on. So I'm gonna keep sanding each side, and also make sure to not use paper. You only need to put the sandpaper or whatever you're sanding it with inside of the water to wet that particular material, and not so that you bring water onto the router. Make sure that you apply as little water as possible onto the router itself. once you're done, take your microfiber cloth and wipe it off clean. Make sure that you clean every single area, and after drying it with a dry fiber cloth, I like to use another dry one and dry it off again, and then later on I wipe it with alcohol even for good measure, and I let it air dry for a little bit before I start spray painting. So now I've cleaned it, and now it's time for the top. So for the top, make sure that you don't put it on the table and then send it applying pressure. Notice that I'm holding it in my hand so that the clips underneath don't get damaged. So I'm just gonna keep on sanding it on top of my hand, wet sanding, so that I don't put it on the table and apply pressure to it. And this way I always am careful to make sure that the clips are safe and not broken. I'm sanding this top properly now, and then once I'm done, I'm gonna dry it off with a microfiber cloth again to make sure that it's completely clean. Once that is done, now this is the paint that I used. The paint that I used was the 1-2 frost glass, so that you cannot see if somebody whatever is behind the glass, but you can use any clear coat that you want. You can now go outside or any ventilated area that you feel is proper to actually go ahead and spray paint your stuff. Very light coat in the beginning. This particular spray paint actually took less than a minute to dry before took less than a minute in order for it to dry for me to need to apply another coat again, so that was great. So apply as many coats as you want, but make sure that it looks desirable, and always remember to follow the instructions that is given on the spray paint itself. Once you finish spraying as many coats as you want, you just let it air dry for a few minutes, for however long it needs to dry. In my case, I left it for 10 minutes just to make sure, and then I'm taking it back inside to reassemble. So the first thing that goes is the top itself. The cover itself goes on top once again. Once the cover is on top, all I need to do is put the clip back on for the back, for the land cover and antenna cover, and then I turn it upside down, put the bottom back on, make sure that it's facing the right side, okay, and once I put that on, I'm gonna screw it back on, put all 6 screws back in. I'm gonna put all 6 screws back in. Alright, and once all 6 screws are back in, all I need to do left is, and I'm gonna put the 2 screws at the top in the middle and screw those back on. You can see that I like using the drill. Then I turn it upside down again so I can put the rubber feet to cover the screws. Right? Once the rubber feet are on, turn it upside down again, and I put the top on. Those clip, make sure that you align those little round things on the side. There are 2 little plastic things that actually insert into the ones on the inside. Align that, clip it in, and once that is there, you're good to go. The router is all back together. You can power it on. So this is the finished product, and now it went from having that terrible yellow stain looking thing from the stain in the sun to looking pretty good again. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you on the next one. Peace.